From what I can tell, I'm a hyper-conscientious brute. Someone who doesn't bite his tongue much, but also is very careful about not offending other people. I hate to wear out my welcome. I'm also a preacher and a proselytizer. My preaching is complicated by the fact that I'm an anti-absolutist. I'm absolutely opposed to absolutism. I am preaching a certain kind of human receptivity or curiosity. I'm mouthy as hell, and so I have to deal with the fact that almost every week, sometimes every day, someone accuses me of being a know-it-all prick. And I get that a lot. Or being defensive. They accuse me of being defensive. And so I'm very interested in how to deal with that. And perhaps that has relevance in your life. Maybe you deal with someone who accuses you of being defensive, who stops listening to you because they've decided you're arrogant or that you can't listen. It's ambiguous whether they can't listen to you or you can't listen to them. But the question becomes, how do you cultivate and maintain trust with someone like that, given that they are prone to accuse you of defensiveness? How do you respond in a way that sounds more like defense or something else, but not defensive, so they don't simply shut you out? Now, I have over the years, I've accumulated some solutions to this. None of them are surefire. Remember, I'm an absolutist against absolutism. These are ideas. These are things that I find useful as I deal with people who accuse me of defensiveness. And so I want to offer them to you here. Okay, the first one is get over yourself. I love phrases like nothing human is foreign to me. You are not superhuman. You could be wrong. Most of my research started with me coming up with the mantra, I wouldn't put it past me. That is, nothing human is foreign to me. Because of that, I find it useful to pre-grieve possibilities about what I really am, so that I don't wince when someone calls me a know-it-all prick. I have visited that possibility. I keep that possibility in mind. I could give you a detailed assessment of myself as a know-it-all prick. So when they say it, I'm not shocked like I'm hearing it for the first time. I've already considered the possibility. I haven't dismissed the possibility. It's quite possible that I'm a know-it-all prick. So related to that, I make this assumption. If I want anyone's trust, I have to earn it by their standards. I don't have to earn their trust, but if I want it, I have to earn it by their standards, and vice versa. That is, if anybody wants my trust, I don't owe anyone trust. I don't even owe my intimate friends trust. Or a partner. If you're partnered with someone, you don't owe them trust, not from my perspective, nor do they owe you trust. Recognizing that no one owes me trust and vice versa, that I don't have to trust anyone, I find it useful because I won't vie for high horse authority. That is, I will not try to get them to dismount their high horse so that I can mount the steed instead. It's not like, because I disagree with you, I'm right and you're wrong. I don't want to get into those battles where both of us are accusing each other of being arrogant. I want to neutralize or de-escalate such arguments. So here's an example of how that plays out for me. Sometimes people have said to me, don't tell me how I feel, I know how I feel. And I agree with them. I don't get to tell them how they feel, but they don't get to tell me how they feel either. We are each entitled to our interpretation of how each other feels. That they have intimacy with their own feelings doesn't necessarily mean they know what they are. It's called self-reporting bias. That is, we have all sorts of reasons why we wouldn't know how we feel and wouldn't want to know. So in terms of mind reading rights, who has the right to read whose mind? I figure everybody does, and that there's no final authority on that. They are entitled to have their opinion that I'm just being defensive. I am entitled to have my opinion about whatever's going on with them, including that they're just being defensive. And there's no final authorities, no pulling rank. There's no last word on who's right and who's wrong. We each get to have our own opinions. Related to that, I've long said that I am a fisher of men, but it is all catch and release. by which I mean I'm borrowing that line from the Bible, which should be a fisher of human beings, not just men. I find great power in not having to persuade someone that I'm right. I don't have to be defensive in a way that leans into them, off balance with myself, leans in because I'm desperate for them to change their mind to whatever I think is right. There's that common assumption that you can't change other people. I don't buy it. One way I might think about it is that I can change people, but usually if I don't care whether I do. That is, there is a power in not needing to persuade the other person you're right. It keeps me from vying for the high horse in what I call an infallibility death match. Like, you're wrong about everything, you should trust me instead of you, and vice versa. Two people doing that. It's groundless, it's stupid. It dumbs down a conversation. So not caring about persuading the other person I'm right has been an incredible source of power and keeps me from getting defensive. A lot of debate employs loaded words, positive and negative words. Defensive is a negative word. You don't want to be called defensive. Defending yourself is a positive term. It sounds like a good thing to do. You always defend yourself, never be defensive, that kind of thing. I find it very useful to neutralize or counter such loaded terms. To illustrate it, I won't go into detail here. If someone calls me stubborn, which sounds negative, I can translate stubborn into two other languages. So stubborn is negativese. That's this loaded negative. I can come up with a positive term for the same behavior, which is steadfast. So I can do the same the other way around. If someone compliments me for being steadfast, I can remember the negative term for that, pig-headed or stubborn, right? Or I can just come up with a neutral term for it, a term that describes the behavior without any loading. What does it mean to be stubborn or steadfast? It means sticking with a position that you have held. That's about all it means. But when we load it, when people load those terms, they are implying a natural law. Stubborn, since it's negative, is basically a rule. You should never stick with a previously held belief. Steadfast, which sounds positive, implies a rule that you should always stick with it. And I'm not interested in either of those rules because they're bogus as hell. I'm interested in understanding what the behavior is that is bothering the other person without them pretending they're calling a spade by calling it by its negative or positive name. And just look at the behavior, because in my life, I'm just trying to avoid opposite excesses. I don't want to stick with a position too long or drop it too early. So that also prevents me from being defensive. I can consider the possibility that from their opinion, I'm sticking with my position too long when they say I'm stubborn, or that they approve of it, but I don't have to get defensive when they say you're being stubborn. Yeah, I'm sticking with the position I've held until now. I'm sticking with it for now. In terms of holding and folding, at present I'm holding. That's what it would mean when they call me stubborn or call me steadfast. So I find it useful to neutralize or counter loaded terms. Okay? And it helps me stay grounded in the work. You could say the wisdom to know the differences between situations that call for holding or folding, in the example of stubborn, steadfast, or sticking with a position you've held. I also find it useful to do the Steelman argument thing. That is to be able to make the case they're making against you. It shows a certain kind of groundedness that you can do that. I know some people who think that being rational is being able to make a logical, coherent argument in favor of what you believe. I don't think that's the case. I think that that's easy. Anybody can do that. Anybody can make a logical case for anything they want to believe. But to be able to make a case for what you don't want to believe, that shows that you are carefully shopping among the pros and cons of different options. That is, you can visit the other person's position. And it does tend to neutralize their high horse authority. That is, that you can make their case and contemplate it, that is, consider their position, without flipping out, is evidence that you're you're staying with substance. You're not dealing with the character or assassination of you're being defensive. So I find that useful. And then finally, you got to know when to hold and fold when you're talking to someone. Remember, I'm a fisher of men, but it's all catch and release. I don't have to stick around. In most situations, I don't have to stick around and argue with someone who disagrees with me. They're entitled to their opinion. I'm entitled to mine. We can go our separate ways. It's different if we have to live with their decisions. For example, if it's a partner or if it's a government that is turning fascist, something like that. But in general, I don't want to lean into the assumption that I have to somehow persuade. So when someone has concluded that I am just being defensive or a know-it-all prick, if they say that stuff consistently about me, that's evidence that they will shame me for having a different opinion from theirs. That is, that I must be wrong and bad and stupid because I disagree with them. They could be right. I can't rule that out. Nothing human is foreign to me. But I do know at that point that they are unreceptive. So when someone consistently shames me for having an opinion different from theirs, it doesn't make me change my opinion. I read it as an invitation from them to keep them in the dark about my opinion. So at that point, I fold. And it's great if you've got the capacity to, in effect, pre-grieve the loss of friends who find you that way, who decide that you're incorrigible, uncorrectable. That is, to be able to let go of them, to be able to have heard them, not gotten defensive in response, and then let go of them. That way I get consolation of thoroughness, the sense that I have tried to connect with this person, and for whatever reason, my fault, his fault, or just our chemistry or whatever, it's not working and not worth it. And at that point, it's release. In terms of catch and release, it's release. I don't have to care. I wish them well elsewhere.